Welcome to the Social Podcast, where no discussion or debate is off limits.
Look at this beautiful audience. Thank you. Have a seat, everybody. Welcome, happy Thursday. Welcome to the Social, that would be the name of the show. Joining us today is the host of Social's Mom Life Crisis and the NSL on TSN, the one and only Kate McKenna is back.
Hi, guys. All right, so we got a big one we got to dive in today because police in Utah are still looking for a suspect in the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Now, Kirk was shot during an appearance at Utah Valley University just as he was answering a question about gun violence. He was the founder of the conservative youth organization Turning Point USA. Now, a culture warrior with millions of followers on social media and a close ally of U.S. President Donald Trump, he played a key role in driving support for Trump last November and used his platform to rail against liberal viewpoints on gun control, climate change, the civil rights movement, and the LGBTQ plus issues. So what is your reaction, ladies, to yesterday's event? Sin, I'm gonna start with you.
I mean, so many feelings and emotions that have come up for me since around 3 p.m. yesterday when I found out about this. And I first wanna say that I think I can speak for many of us or all of us in this room, I don't believe that anyone should be shot for their political beliefs or any other beliefs for that matter. I think that goes without saying. But I can't help but reflect upon the fact that over the past however many years, every time after we've seen a school shooting, and there was one in the United States yesterday, every time there's been a church mass shooting, a club mass shooting, that oftentimes the conversations, particularly from those on the right, have been thoughts and prayers, and no actionable decisions regarding gun control in the United States. So in my opinion, the conversations that immediately should be happening right now are about what are we going to do about the gun problem in the United States? How do we amend laws to make people safer? How do we avoid these things in the future? But instead of those conversations about gun control or about how to unite America, the conversations that I'm hearing, by and large, particularly from those on the right, is before we know who did this, we don't know. The conversations are about putting down the radical left. That's a quote. Put down the radical left. And this is a war. And I think that should be deeply concerning to all of us.
It's part of how we perhaps got here in the first place. Here's what I'm going to be honest that I'm struggling with, and I don't know if I'm alone in this. I don't think that I am. Clearly, political violence, which a lot of people are calling this, no one's going to condone it. No one's going to sit here and say, this was a great move, guys. No, of course it wasn't. This guy was a father. He was a young man. There are children who are going to grow up without a father, a wife that's going to grow up without a husband. No one is going to sit here and say, that's a great thing. We know that that's awful. This is a tragedy. Where I'm conflicted is this guy was a very controversial figure. So how do you hold space for both never condoning violence and also knowing this guy has said really heinous things, and he's got death threats for years because of the things that he says. So for example, I'm sorry that I even have to quote this, where he said, he was talking about affirmative action 2 years ago, and he was talking about Michelle Obama. He was talking about a lot of prominent women saying, we can simultaneously, oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't even say that right. I'm gonna find the quote in a second, but he basically said that black women don't have a brain, and therefore, why are you trying to take someone's place just because you don't have the brains to actually earn that space? Like, he said heinous things about trans people, black people, women. He says that women, you should be prioritizing having children, forget careers. Like, so how do you hold space for someone like that right now? And that's really difficult. I don't want anybody dead. I don't want anybody dead, but he said really bad things that hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of us are struggling with that. I definitely struggled with that because I'll be honest, I had never heard of Charlie Kirk up until yesterday. And so, so when I saw the news coverage, they were just giving us like the facts of what happened, but I'm like, who is this person? Because traditional news was not going into the clip. So I went online. Unfortunately, the first video I saw was of him being murdered, assassinated, and I was like, wow. And then I saw all the clips, and I saw him debating a lot of university college students on all of the things that you're talking about, gun rights, abortion rights. And I realized very quickly that him and I don't align. And then there's a complicated feelings because on the one hand, I don't align and I don't agree with anything he had to say. And at the same time, I don't want to ever see someone get gunned down and while their wife and 2 small children were at that event. right? So what do you, right? So what do you do? Because a lot of people were quick to say, don't speak ill of the dead. Don't say this, don't say that. But then there's conflicting feelings because he spent his life mocking and minimizing a lot of people. And then I saw something, a psychotherapist who was on, because you know they have all these people, we have to fill our 24-hour news cycle. And they had this great therapist whose name I wish I remembered, but his point was great and I quoted him. It's healthy to acknowledge that boundary. We shouldn't feel obligated to manufacture sorrow for someone who didn't extend it to us or our community. And though I think a lot of us are, right? I think a lot of us.
I'm sorry to interrupt. And it was interesting that he, in fact, said that he didn't believe, like he felt empathy was a weakness.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't want empathy, some might say.
So it's, yeah, that's what I'm saying, the complicated feelings of knowing and seeing what happened and also knowing what he said while he was alive. And then it's okay to hold that space, to not ever celebrate. We're not celebrating what happened to him. But at the same time, maybe your empathy tank is a little dry today because you've heard what he said and you're like, I don't know how to reconcile those feelings. And that's how I was feeling about it.
Listen, I wouldn't say my empathy tank is dry. And in fact, last night, first when I heard about this, I really wanted to watch different types of news coverage, right? Your traditional left-leaning news, your traditional right-leaning news, and also social media. And when I went on social media, first of all, immediately I was fed visuals of this man's murder. It was
horrible.
It was
awful.
And it just, you know, it began to make me think, is there an entire generation now who is desensitized to this type of violence?
Absolutely.
Or is seeing what a bullet can do to human flesh? Could that actually move the needle on gun rights in that country? I'm not sure. And I'm not necessarily hopeful because I was watching visuals from the floor of the House of Representatives yesterday, and there were Democrats and there were Republicans, and they are so divided they couldn't even get a 30-second moment of silence for this man right. They did the 30-second pause, and immediately it devolved into screaming, blaming on both sides. And it's just so clear to me that there are many people, whether liberal or Republican or Democrat in the US, who feel unseen. And for a large portion of that country, this man made them feel seen. I don't agree with many of his beliefs, but many people in that country do. And he was killed in an incredibly violent, vicious, public way. Speculation is running rampant. So where do we go from here? It feels like that country needs a therapist to bring them back together, and I don't think they have one.
No. Can I speak on that a little bit? Because the country is broken. And I've said many times on this show that when America sneezes, Canada catches a cold. So you're wondering, why is a Canadian talk show talking about this? Because this kind of rhetoric and behavior tends to bleed over to us in some ways. 2 words, freedom convoy, okay? That's all I'm gonna put out there. I think leadership is where my head goes to this, because in the past, the convention for the President of the United States is, they call him Commander-in-Chief, but in times of crisis, and today is September the 11th, and that's not lost on us, that in times of crisis, the left and the right have historically come together because the Commander-in-Chief turns into the Comforter-in-Chief and the Uniter-in-Chief. They don't have that right now, and in fact, they have a leader who is perhaps stoking the fires of division rather than saying, everybody, we need to de-escalate because this is crazy. And instead, so my fear for the country, and then you throw social media and algorithms and polarization into the mix, I don't know who is going to step up to try and unite something that clearly is only going to push America further apart. So we have to stay vigilant here, and where are our leaders and what do we expect of our leaders in times of crisis?
That's right, and where we see evidence of that seeping in, again, the divisiveness, we have to resist it because it is by design. We don't know exactly who's the architect of all of this. It's many, many factors go into something like this, but like the more we divide each other, the more, again, like destabilizing that is for an entire nation. And I do think that we do need to pay close attention. Ezra Klein wrote in the New York Times, political violence is a virus. It is contagious, and this is a dark turning point. And I do think this moment yesterday is a dark turning point, and we have to pay close attention. We do.
Yeah. We're gonna leave that right there. Do you care if a CEO dates an employee if everyone seems to be getting their work done? Maybe yes, maybe no. Oh, okay.
Okay.
So a columnist for the Globe and Mail argues that a boss should be held to the highest standards. He or she is the ultimate owner of a company's code of conduct and core values. Therefore, the question is, do you care if your boss is dating a coworker of yours?
You guys care? First of all, what does he look like and how much does he make?
Wait a second.
Wait, I'm playing. I think, you know what, I know a lot of companies have the policy where they don't allow this, but I think the heart wants what the heart wants, and if you're talking about adults, you're not gonna stop them, even if the company says they don't want to. But I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, because I think it's a case by case. It depends on the maturity of the two adults in that relationship. For example, I have a girlfriend who is in a relationship with a person, and he is her boss. They have had many extensive discussions about how they handle the breakup, the discretion they're gonna have, and how they're gonna move in the workplace. So I'm not worried about them. Plus, they both have agreed they have a lot to lose if this goes south. I also have worked with people where there was a boss dating a subordinate, and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare for everybody who worked around them, because you couldn't call out the subordinate for getting favoritism. They were doing stuff in front of us, and it was very uncomfortable. And then when that relationship was over, the subordinate went around talking about our boss's genitals. There were things in the relationship, and it became so disgraceful. So again, I think it comes down to a person by person. But again, what does he look like? No, I'm like, forget it. But what do you guys think? Would you do it? I've never dated, by the way, I've never dated anybody in our industry.
Because he wasn't cute enough, or?
Didn't make enough money.
Leaving it alone. Leaving that alone.
I'm okay with workplace affairs when they're on the same level. Like if people are on the same
affair.
We're talking about relationships, affairs.
Yeah, okay.
She might be. I don't care if people are having an affair. It's none of my business. If they're on the same level, I think it does get complicated when you get a power imbalance. For sure, I'm not going to argue that. But I guess I would say, like, what about other scenarios whereby, let's say they start off at the same level, but one gets a promotion. What do you do then?
I think someone has to quit.
You think someone has to quit?
Or change departments.
Okay.
Listen, like you brought up you're thinking about the two people involved. I'm thinking about the team. If a person is dating their boss, who's also my boss, and they're getting preferential treatment, I'm mad about that. If that person is in bed with my boss, telling them things about me, I'm not happy about that. So I think if you really love this person, ask for a department change.
Okay, I know, but sometimes it doesn't work that way.
But also, I would ask the question of, like, what about, okay, so that scenario painted, I understand that, but what about favoritism in the workplace? We all know, like, how would you feel any different if your boss was becoming very close friends with an employee? That is a favoritism situation that we don't talk about. So why does the company get to make rules and regulations around romantic relationships when relationships of all kinds can influence a boss? I'm just throwing that out there.
Wait, I feel like there can be more manipulation when it's a sexual relationship.
I don't know. Best friends can do a lot of manipulating.
I know, but
mean girls can do a lot of manipulating. Not that usually. Anyway.
I think clearly the policy has to be clear, and it has to be at the outset right away. I also don't have a problem if people who are coworkers and considered equals are dating, because for me it is about the power. I think on paper it's fine and dandy if everything's going well, but if and when things go south and there is a power differential, you think you can rationally think through it and talk through it ahead of time, but like many marriages and divorces show, things can get ugly. Yeah. And I think you know, but you're also, to the point of the columnist, you are setting an example for everybody else. And so there's the CEO, but what if there's a manager and a subordinate and somebody else who's a subordinate? So I also think about the team in all of this part. We like to believe that work is a meritocracy, that it is how good you are that gets you places, but this muddies the water. Yeah. And I think when you're talking about corporate culture, there is no room for muddy waters. And I think somebody has to quit and move on.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's also a distraction to the whole office, because as much as you think nobody knows, somebody
knows.
Always knows.
I don't know. We're going to move on to this. I have so much more to say, but we'll circle back later on. We're going to move to fashion now, because Emily Blunt is being credited with giving the going out top an updated spin. If you're sitting there going, what the heck is a going out top? Vogue defines it as fancier than a regular tank top and something that your grandparents might not like. So do you welcome the return of the going out top?
No. And listen, I am a millennial. Like, I can taste the vanilla vodka when I hear this story, because I remember being—
I think it's Alizé, baby.
Drunk. Not for me. I remember being in university. I loved the ritual of going to get a bar top at the shop. Then we'd stop by the liquor store and get the cheap—
You called it a bar top?
We called it a bar top. Then we go to the grocery store to get the food for afterwards and the mixer. Then we go back to the house filled with the mice and do the pre-drink. That was the ritual, and I loved it. However, bar tops are heinous looking. They are bedazzled. They are bejeweled.
Speak for yourself.
They're fashion fun. And here's the other thing. People only ever thought about the top. No one ever thought about the bottom. Everyone just wore bar tops with denim.
Because that's how you get the free drinks, baby.
I honestly,
Leave them in the past.
appreciate your take. I don't know why I didn't go first on this topic, by the way, because I invented and proliferated the going out top. Obviously, this was such a uniform. Back then, partying, partying has evolved so much, if the kids are doing it at all. We didn't think about the bottom because really most of the time, first of all, here's the other part of the bar top you didn't discuss.
Okay.
Mine were not ugly, first of all. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
But second of all, no, but I agree, bedazzled the whole thing. It's because back when we would party, you were dancing your butt off. We would actually leave the club sweating. The bar top, by definition, has to be skimpy.
Okay.
It has to breathe, has to be good fabric.
Isn't it just a top, though?
No.
Why is it called a going out
it's not.
bar top?
Bejeweled.
It's just
Clearly, you did not go out.
Sexy top.
I've never heard of this
Tell
before.
me you didn't go to
Ruching.
clubs without telling me you didn't go to clubs.
Yeah, that's right.
I did it. I don't understand
You,
this.
you think it was dressed down?
It's just I don't know. I was like, I don't know. I've never heard of this before. And then I was like, look back in old photos, and I'm like, is this a going out top? Is that a going out top?
Yes, it's shimmery.
Hold on.
You would not
Is
wear
that
that to the
your midriff
office.
showing?
No, my midriff was not showing.
Were you wearing it with denim?
I was wearing it with denim.
Would you wear that to work?
No.
It's a
Then
bar
it's a
top.
going out
It's a
top.
bar top.
Listen,
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I didn't have the budget back then when I was doing the most of my going out. I didn't have the money for going out tops and other tops. It was one top. This was a top that if we took the jacket off, we could, and that's how I used to shop. I'm like, okay, I could wear this to the club, but if I put a jacket over it, it looks professional, right? Right? And that's what we would do.
You're reminding me, I also used to have a bar coat, and we
Yes.
were too cheap to pay cover, so it would be a hoodie, and then we'd shove it under the bench, and if
Correct.
someone stole it,
Behind the DJ
we're fine.
booth.
I'm going to tell you something. I
Classy.
know we're going heavy, but this generation doesn't know. This generation doesn't know how resilient we are because we
God.
partied in bar tops and high heels in the middle of February.
In the middle of winter.
Okay?
That's
what
true.
we used to do.
That is fact.
Okay? That's what we used to do.
That's fact.
Anyway. God, we're making ourselves sound old. Let's get you up to date on the celebrity gossip. There's speculation that the romance is in full bloom between Zoe Kravitz and Harry Styles. The two were spotted having lunch with her dad, none other than Lenny Kravitz, as we all know. So is introducing a significant other to your parents, quote, taking things to the next level?
I think so. Yeah, I respect my parents so much that I only ever brought home legit contenders, so a grand total of 3. One of them
Married?
one of them I
You
regret.
already
I wish
slept
it
with
was
3
2.
people? Okay.
But I do wonder if the vibe of the parent sets the tone. Like, my parents are not Lenny Kravitz. My parents are a little more traditional. They're not rock stars. Do you think Lenny Kravitz would feel differently from, say, my parents and would be down with meeting anyone who comes her way?
I hear what you're saying. I know what you mean. I think it depends for me on the age and stage. Like in high school, everyone I dated, I brought home to meet my parents. It was just kind of the thing you
Everyone?
did. Every single one of them that I brought home. And it was like, whatever. There were.
How did you introduce them? Like, these are my friends?
No, this is my boyfriend. I would have a boyfriend.
A new one every week?
Yeah, but my dad made a point of like always screwing up their names, like calling it's like, like he would call the guy Matthew and his name was Jason, or the guy that
On purpose?
on purpose. And I said, well, Dad, you keep on getting the guy's name wrong. And he said, I don't have to remember their names until I know they're sticking around. And I was just like,
It's one step. Yeah,
fair.
I'll take, my dad is European, so taking that mentality one step further. From a very young age, my dad would say, if you ever think of bringing anybody around here, you be ready to give him a wheelbarrow and a pitchfork, and let's see what he can do down at the farm.
that's next
I
level.
remember that from when I was little. So my household was, no, I'm not bringing anybody home unless I'm going to marry them. I also only brought home the serious guys as well. But for me and my family, if you introduce someone, that is you saying, this person I am bringing in, and I would like for it's the invitation for them, our family, to wrap their arms around him. So I'm not gonna waste their time if I'm wasting my time. So Ryan
but
came...
we have friends sometimes who come in and out of our lives. You know what I
but
mean?
that's
No,
different
that's
than a
different. No,
boyfriend.
I'm talking about a boyfriend.
Okay,
So if
all right.
I come in, that means this is Melissa's special person to Melissa, so now this person is a special person to us.
Okay, all right.
So if that's then that way you're not bringing home some,
Here's the
riffraff
deal, but I
Saturday
think it
night.
depends on the way that your parents and your family treated dating. Some people, their parents are very strict, so it was considered a very big deal to bring someone home. And clearly in your family, they were like, you were allowed to date, so you could bring everybody home. But I'll tell you this much, you shouldn't pay attention to if they've introduced you to the family. You have to pay attention to how they react to you coming over. Because for some people, like I have this one friend who, I'll just call him a player. He had a lot of ladies. And he had a habit of bringing them all to his mother's house. And he would introduce them to all of his childhood friends. I was one of them. And those women, I could see them light up. They thought they were so special. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm meeting his mother and his friends. And we're all sitting there going, girl, no one's gonna remember your name. There is a revolving door here, but they thought it was really special because some people think it's special, but I think you have to pay attention to the family members. If they say, she has never, ever brought someone home, so you must be a big deal, that's what you listen to. Meeting a parent, could just be meeting a parent.
Did the mom care? Did the mom care?
The mom is
about
so,
the door?
No, she was so sweet. Her son is the apple of her eye. He can do no wrongs. And she's just a lovely, sweet lady. So she was just nice to everybody. Oh. But those girls, you could see them kind of taking it like, oh my God, I'm gonna be the next Mrs. And it's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. But yeah.